Yo guys, Travis here, and this is the iPhone 15. Now I'm going to approach this review quite a bit differently than my Pro Max review, which if you haven't seen that, go check that out because I was really proud of that video. I also wanted to take a minute and say thank you to all of you supporting the videos that I've made thus far. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I've got a ton of videos on the way, most notably my M3 Max MacBook Pro review, which should be out next week. Now about the iPhone 15, this year's baseline iPhone is essentially an iPhone 14 Pro rewrapped in an all new aluminum body. And if I'm being 100% honest, it's the phone 90% of people should upgrade to if they're looking to upgrade. Obviously tech enthusiasts like myself are going to upgrade to the Pro Max, but I wanted to take a step back from the Pro Max and look at the standard phone objectively on who should get this device. But for the normal person that wants an easy, reliable, great upgrade, the 15 regular is the move, especially for those that are rocking a 4+ year-old phone. It has an awesome display, great battery life, and if you go for the Plus model, it can have better battery life in some cases than the Pros. It has last year's best main camera, and it has USB-C, of course. Now, if we look at this phone objectively, it's only missing a few features that the Pro models have that someone would actually use on a daily basis. Specifically, the telephoto zoom lens, macro lens, A17 Pro chip, always on display with Pro Motion, and Pro camera formats like ProRes and ProRAW, and that really sums it up. The only other difference would be the external build quality, and to be honest, it still feels very premium. This phone continues the trend of Apple using aluminum for the baseline phones, and it really feels nice in the hand. It has beveled edges around the aluminum that meets the glass, and it's super comfortable and very lightweight. Everything else about this phone really makes it a 14 Pro in a new body. It has last year's A16 chip, which packs plenty of punch for everyday tasks. It has a Super Retina XDR display with Dynamic Island, and to be honest, this display is phenomenal. And touching on Dynamic Island, it provides all the UI enhancements that you would get by having that feature, and I've really come to love it. The main camera can shoot in 48 megapixels, just not in RAW compared to the 14 Pro, but these HEIF 48 megapixel stills look awesome. And because it is a 48 megapixel sensor, it does allow for a 2x zoom, which essentially just crops in on the sensor and gives you a 24 megapixel output, so it's not digitally cropping after the fact. Now, I did want to compare this year's phone to a few generations older phones, so I chose a 13 mini and an iPhone XR. The XR is still supported by iOS 17, and the 13 mini, being only 2 generations behind, is a good comparison in my opinion. In some instances, the photos can look very similar, and some instances not. The XR does have smart HDR, and of course that's progressed significantly over the last few years. And one thing you'll notice about this flower photo is the fact that the iPhone 15's depth of field is significantly more. The other thing I noticed comparing these 3 generations of iPhone is the fact that the white balance, color, and contrast is different depending on the generation, and they're all kind of unique in their own kind of way. The front-facing camera is way better on the newer iPhones. And one thing to note is that the iPhone 13 and below did not have autofocus on the front-facing camera. The other thing is the fact that night mode did not exist prior to iPhone 11, so anything older than that, night photos and really dimly lit situations are gonna struggle heavy on those older model phones. And in terms of video, we can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, cinematic mode up to 4K 30, and of course it's gonna shoot in Dolby Vision HDR. And because I didn't say it already, this video is being shot on an iPhone 15. Here we have a camera comparison shooting with the iPhone XR first with our PS5 with the slime. Then we go into the iPhone 13 mini, followed by the iPhone 15. Now, all of these are pretty similar, especially because these are lit with studio lights. But the thing to keep in mind here is that the newer iPhones past iPhone 12 are gonna be recording in HDR by default. So anything older than that is not gonna be recording as much dynamic range, and you're not gonna have as much color as you would have on anything newer than an iPhone 12. Now, in terms of physical features, the last thing we got up on the list is USB-C, which to me is more of a convenience factor on this device more than anything else. Having the ability to charge and transfer data with any cable, regardless of who made it, is super handy. And we're getting to the point where everything is USB-C. Game controllers, SSDs, cameras, headphones, DACs, the list goes on. So the fact that you can use one cable to charge this iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, connect it to a camera and SSD, is really convenient. And this really opens up the variety of things you can connect to this device. As you may have seen in my iPhone 15 USB-C accessories tested video, there's a lot of stuff you can connect to this thing. Now, the one caveat here is that it is tapped out at USB 2.0 speeds, which basically puts it on par with the same speed of any iPhone using Lightning, except in this case, it changes the port style. And I think for most standard users, this isn't going to be a problem because most people aren't transferring hundreds of gigs of ProRes video files back and forth to their computer. They're really just transferring their family photos, which end up on iCloud, Google Drive, or Dropbox anyway. And when you are finding yourself moving files across to another device, like this video for this talking head, it's going to be over AirDrop. Now, ultimately, who is this phone for? And I think anybody that's on an iPhone 11 or prior, such as an iPhone XR or an iPhone 8, are going to see a world of a difference, especially if you're rocking one of those older phones with its original battery. I feel like most people aren't upgrading their phones every 2 years like they used to on those 2-year contracts with the phone carriers, but now holding on to their device for much longer, basically until the wheels fall off. And if you look at the feature list of gains over the last 4+ years, it's quite lengthy. To name a few, we now have 5G, Wi-Fi 6, 4K video recording on the front-facing camera, cinematic mode, actual HDR video playback, MagSafe, and the list goes on. The other aspect here is the Plus model. Someone upgrading from like an 8 Plus or a 7 Plus that really just likes the larger screen size and bigger battery, but doesn't really need any of the Pro features, the Plus model is perfect. Price is also a huge factor to consider as well, especially these days. And as an example, an iPhone 11 trade-in towards an iPhone 15 would be about $25 a month. And another example from an older model phone, like an 8 Plus to a 15 Plus, would be about $34 a month. And those are prices from Apple with their 24-month financing and Apple's trade-in. Of course, if you do it from your carrier or if you sell your phone third party, you might be able to get more value, but this is just straight from apple.com. And one thing to consider with cost is the longevity of the device. And honestly, I think this is going to be really important because most of the people getting the regular phone probably are going to hang on to it for several years. And the iPhone 15 is good for at least 5 years of the latest OS updates. As an example, the oldest phone you can run on iOS 17 is the XS, XR family, which is from 5 years ago. And for those still rocking older model phones, even going as far back as the iPhone 6S from 2015, Apple is still issuing software patches for that phone. And if we look at the last few years of iPhone releases, the gap between the standard model and the Pro model seems to be getting larger and larger as the years go on. The Pro moniker started with the iPhone 11, offering an iPhone 11 and 11 Pro, and prior to that, Apple would offer an S model and then just sell the previous year's phone at a cheaper discount. And I think since the introduction of the Pro model, Apple's really figuring out what features the Pro level user uses and implement those in the Pro, and what features are most important for the standard user that's buying the regular baseline iPhone. And I think this is where the decision comes down to which phone you should get when you're upgrading. And unless you're utilizing your phone for the higher end Pro features like ProRes, ProRAW, video recording in log, and want the titanium body and the USB 3.0 transfer speeds, this regular phone can do everything you need. It's got plenty of power and features to get the job done for years to come. And having this device on hand for the last couple months now really shows what it's capable of. I've used this phone in tandem with the iPhone 15 Pro Max around the office for taking photos, social media posts, playing games, and utilizing it as another device. And honestly, it's really great. And using it like a normal user would on a daily basis, it's a great experience and one that I don't think anyone would be disappointed with. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a comment down below on which iPhone you upgraded from if you did upgrade this year. And if you didn't upgrade this year, which phone would you choose if you did? And have a good night.